Good morning, everybody. This is Miss Huval. This video is for English 3 AP. Now, we started working on the AP style essay called the Rhetorical Analysis with our Gatsby essay. Now, we presumably are going to take the AP test at some point, so we need to work on writing the rhetorical analysis as it's going to be on the test. So the Gatsby essay that I had you write was a rhetorical analysis of a fictional novel, actually, not even a short piece of fiction, but a giant, big novel. On the AP exam, it'll be a little different. The same process will apply, but it'll be somewhat different. On the AP exam, you'll have a short piece of nonfiction, and you'll be asked to do a rhetorical analysis on that. So, as you know, a short piece of fiction won't actually have a theme, but it will have lots of rhetorical devices. So the prompt on an AP rhetorical analysis question will be something like, how does the author use rhetorical devices to achieve his purpose? Or how does the author use rhetoric in order to get her message across? Something like that. So in this lesson, we're going to be dealing with the 2016 prompt. So on JPams, under Pages, I have for you the 2016 AP, written response questions in a PDF. Okay, so you should be able to get on JPams, access that PDF, look at question 2, which is the rhetorical analysis question, on the 2016 test. That's what we're going to start with. If you have the ability to print it out, that's going to be your best bet. So pause me now, try to go find it and print it out. However, you could do a split screen with me and the document up in front of you as well. Or you could take a picture of it and have it on your phone so that you could mark it up, although it would be kind of small on your phone, I think. Okay, so I'm assuming now that you have the 2016 AP English Language and Composition free response question in front of you, question number 2, which is a speech that Margaret Thatcher gave at the funeral of Ronald Reagan. Okay, so I need you to read it. Pause me while you read it, and then come back to me. Okay, so I'm assuming that you've accessed the document, you've read the speech that Margaret Thatcher gave at the funeral of Ronald Reagan, and you're ready to discuss it for rhetoric. Now, remember, when we do a rhetorical analysis essay, we are trying to figure out how the author's use of rhetorical devices impacts his message or his purpose. Now that is a big ask, okay? Because we can't get in there. We don't know what he's thinking. We don't know what she's thinking, the author, as she writes. But the things that jump out at you as you're reading, you have to assume they were put there to jump out at you. The things that impact you, you're like, wow, that was a powerful image, or that word really got me. You have to assume that was put there for that reason. Okay, so whenever we do a rhetorical analysis, we are looking at the rhetorical diamond. We're looking at the rhetorical diamond. We want to know how the author, the context, the purpose, and the audience interact. Okay, so we want to use this terminology too. We don't want to say reader, we want to say audience. We want to use this lingo: author, context, audience, and purpose. Okay, so in this particular speech, it helps for you to know a couple of things. It tells you in the little introduction part, and you should always read the introduction part, that Margaret Thatcher was a former Prime Minister of Great Britain. And she uses the word eulogy, so that's the word that you need to use. And it's to the American people in honor of former United States President Ronald Reagan, with whom she had worked closely. All right, so You know, first off, that they were very close. If you read it, you know they were personal friends both during the time that she was prime minister and the time he was president and after that. Okay? So she has a lot of credibility when it comes to speaking on his job that he did as a president and him as a human being. All right? So from that, we know that the author is Margaret Thatcher, the former Prime Minister of Great Britain. We know that the context is a eulogy, and we know what a eulogy generally does. It generally praises someone, evaluates their life, and points out the good things about them. You know her audience is the United States citizens. How do I know that? It said it right there at the top of the prompt. All right? Now, what's her message? She clearly wishes to praise him. She clearly wishes history to remember him in a favorable light, and those things are key. Now, I don't know how much history you're aware of as it pertains to Ronald Reagan, but he was the president during the Cold War, and the undoing of the Soviet Union began and was in large part underway during the 8 years he was president. The other thing you really need to know is that he was the former governor of California, but he was in California because he was an actor. So a lot of people discredited him intellectually because they said, oh, he's just an actor, he's a buffoon, you know, blah, blah, blah. He's not very smart. The other thing you need to know about Ronald Reagan is that he died after a long battle with Alzheimer's. And many people suspected that his initial stages happened while he was still the president. So those two things are pretty important. So when we think about what is the rhetorical purpose, why did Margaret Thatcher choose to do the things that she did, and what was her overall message? At a surface level, you could say to praise Ronald Reagan and to give a nice speech at his funeral. But the deeper level might be, and I'm sure you picked up on this when you were reading it, even if you didn't know about him being an actor or the Alzheimer's, to secure his spot, to secure his legacy as a great president. All right, so that's what we would put down here as the purpose, okay? And when you're reading these little nonfiction passages, you got to keep thinking about these things in your brain the whole time. Okay, who's the author? What's the purpose? What's the context? And who is the audience? And that's the lingo I want you to use when you are looking at this. All right? So when you were reading this, my guess is that some things jumped out at you. Okay, so let's see if the same things that jumped out at me jumped out at you. All right. So when we're back on these rhetorical analysis nonfiction passages, things we can write about. Okay, so what am I including as a rhetorical device? What all do I put on that list that we can choose from when we're writing? Okay, I'm putting pathos, ethos, and logos back on the table from last year. I don't know. You might want to shoot me for that. I don't know. But remember, a pathos is the appeal to the audience's emotion. Ethos is the credibility of the speaker. And logos is the evidence that is used and the structure of the argument. Okay? So all those things are back on the table. Now, you don't have to talk about all of them. You could pick one of them. And when you're writing this essay, remember, it's going to be timed. And so you're probably only going to have time for 4 paragraphs. You're going to be looking at the introduction, 2 body paragraphs, and the conclusion. And like we did with the Gatsby essay, you're going to have a main rhetorical device for each paragraph, and then you're going to try to find minor ones that you can kind of nest in there. You remember how we did that in the Gatsby essay? So that's what we're kind of on the lookout for, okay? So pathos and ethos could be, you could say that you could write a whole paragraph on ethos. You could write a whole paragraph on pathos. You don't have to talk about logos, or you could talk about logos. They're not a 3 in a row kind of deal. You don't have to use all 3 to be able to use one, in other words, is what I'm trying to tell you. All right? So, in rhetorical analysis essays, almost always, you should keep tone in your back pocket. because tone is something you can analyze no matter what. Okay, and if nothing else jumps out at you, tone can. So in this one, we would definitely say we've got a laudatory or praising tone, undoubtedly. So how does he establish that tone? And whenever you use tone in a rhetorical analysis, you can't just say he has tone, or she, the author, uses tone. You got to be specific. What tone is it? And then how in the piece of nonfiction does that tone develop? And we know the things that are most closely linked to tone are word choice and sometimes imagery. Now this one doesn't have a lot of imagery, but boy does she use her word choice well. So let's take a look at lines 60 to 71, okay? So in this praising or laudatory tone that Margaret Thatcher establishes, she uses diction, which you know is word choice. It's the fancy word for word choice. And under there, you know, you can always use connotation. Okay, what sort of connotation do these words have? How does that impact the tone? So in lines 60 to 71, she's doing specific things to combat his reputation as an actor, which means he's kind of dumb. You know, he wasn't a lawyer, he wasn't a U.S. senator, no, he was governor of California, but, you know, he didn't take the typical path to the presidency. He wasn't a hugely successful businessman, didn't come from a really important family like the Roosevelts, you know, I mean, that kind of thing. And also the Alzheimer's thing. So he wants to show, Margaret Thatcher wants to show that he has wisdom and that he has strength. If you take a look at lines 60 to 71, you're going to find a lot of words that emphasize that, okay? Take a look at line 64. He was not baffled or disoriented or overwhelmed. 64. He knew almost instinctively what to do. Line 68, he's referred to as the old man. But then in 70 to 72, it talks about his firm leadership, and it says his resolve was firm and unyielding, showing his strength. Line 73, yet his ideas, so clear, were never simplistic. He saw the many sides of the truth. Okay? So in that section, you could pick out words that are combating the idea that he was weak, or that he was dumb, or that he was losing his mind, and that adds to the laudatory tone. Okay? There's also a good example of antithesis. If you take a look at lines 30 to 39, we're adding to this praising tone by showing that his vision was singular. Like other people didn't get things like he got things. So let's take a look at lines 30 to 39, please. It says, others prophesied the decline of the West. He inspired America, blah, blah, blah. Others saw only limits to growth. He transformed a stagnant economy into an engine of opportunity. Others hoped at best for an uneasy cohabitation with the Soviet Union. He won the Cold War, not only without firing a shot, but also by inviting enemies out of their fortress and turning them into friends. So we call that antithesis, the use of opposites, and this proves that he's a singular visionary. Other people couldn't see things and do things as well as he did. And so that adds to why we should praise and honor him, which adds to why our purpose, well, it goes back to our purpose, which is that he is a great American president and deserves that name. Of course, that's in the opinion of Margaret Thatcher. She's trying to establish his credibility there. Okay? Now, I'm going to stop the video here because I'm finding it easier to upload smaller sections. There'll be a part 2 on this rhetorical analysis, so look for that. And gosh, I hope y'all are doing well. I sure do miss you. See you in a minute.